David thought he was performing a simple act of kindness when he rescued a fragile kitten trembling on the side of the road. He fed it, kept it warm, and watched it grow, believing he had saved an ordinary house cat. But as months passed, strange signs emerged. Its cries were different, its leaps unnaturally powerful, and its appetite far from normal. Then came the shocking revelation at the vet. This wasn't a kitten at all. What David had been raising left everyone who heard the story stunned. Before we start, make sure to hit like, share, and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. The morning air was crisp, the kind that made every breath visible in a faint puff of white. David, a quiet man in his 40s, was driving home from his night shift when something unusual caught his eye on the side of the road. At first, he thought it was a fallen leaf, curled and still against the pavement. But as he slowed the car, he noticed a faint twitch. His heart tightened. It wasn't a leaf at all, it was alive. Pulling over, David stepped out and walked closer. Lying helplessly on the cold ground was what appeared to be a newborn kitten. Its body was tiny, fragile enough to fit into his palm. Its eyes were sealed shut, ears folded, and it shivered with every shallow breath. The sight made his chest ache. Without hesitation, David scooped the little creature into his hands, feeling the faint warmth of its body. It let out the weakest squeak, barely audible, but it was enough to stir something deep within him. "Don't worry, little one," he whispered softly. "I've got you now." He wrapped the animal gently in a cloth from his car and placed it on the passenger seat. As he started the engine, one thought consumed him. This tiny life wouldn't survive another hour alone. From that moment, David knew he was responsible for its survival. Back home, David hurried inside, his hands trembling as he placed the tiny creature in a small box lined with towels. The kitten's breathing was faint, its body so frail it seemed like the slightest breeze could break it. David rushed to heat a bottle of milk replacer, carefully fitting a dropper to its mouth. At first, the kitten resisted, too weak to swallow. But after a moment, a tiny tongue flicked out, and it began to drink. Relief washed over him like a wave. That night, David barely slept. Every few hours, he warmed the little one, fed it, and rubbed its belly gently to help it digest. The routine became his mission. Day and night revolved around the fragile life he had saved. Neighbors began to notice his exhaustion, yet they admired the tenderness with which he cared for the creature. "You're a good man, David," one said. He only smiled, too tired to explain how much it meant to him. But as the days turned into weeks, David began to notice small peculiarities. The kitten's cries didn't sound like those of a normal cat. They were sharper, more piercing, almost like a strange chirp. Its limbs seemed unusually long for its size, its tiny claws sharper than expected. Still, David brushed these thoughts aside. To him, it was just his little survivor, and no matter what, he was determined to keep it alive. Weeks rolled by, and the fragile newborn grew stronger under David's devoted care. Its fur thickened, its eyes opened, revealing glistening orbs that gleamed with a sharpness David hadn't expected. Unlike the round, gentle eyes of kittens, these had an intensity, as if they were always watching, always aware. At first, he told himself it was just his imagination. Every animal was unique, after all. But soon, the oddities became harder to ignore. The kitten didn't meow like the others David had once cared for. Instead, it released high-pitched chirps and guttural growls, sounds that seemed out of place in a quiet home. When it played, its movements were quick, powerful, almost too coordinated for something so small. Sometimes, it would leap suddenly across the room, landing with precision that startled him. Then there was its appetite. Unlike the neighborhood cats that craved warm milk or soft food, this little one grew restless, even agitated, unless given raw meat. David remembered the first time he offered it a small piece of chicken. Its tiny jaws snapped with surprising strength, tearing into the flesh as though it had been waiting for it all along. Friends who visited commented on its unusual looks. "Are you sure that's a kitten?" One neighbor joked uneasily. David laughed it off, but deep down, unease gnawed at him. Something wasn't right. He had rescued a life, yes, but was it really the life he thought it was? Still, his bond with the creature kept him from searching for answers. At least, not yet. One late afternoon, David decided it was time for a routine checkup. He carefully placed the now lively kitten into a small carrier and drove to the nearest veterinary clinic. The creature pawed restlessly at the door, its strange cries echoing through the car, making David grip the steering wheel tighter. A part of him dreaded what the vet might say, though he couldn't explain why. Inside the clinic, the vet, Dr. Miller, greeted him warmly. At first glance, the doctor's smile faltered. He adjusted his glasses, leaning closer to examine the animal. He gently lifted it from the carrier, studying its sharp features, unusually long limbs, and piercing gaze. David waited, his heart thudding in his chest. Doctor Miller cleared his throat. David, this isn't a kitten. The words struck like lightning. David blinked in disbelief, convinced he had misheard. What do you mean? I've been raising it for months. The vet nodded gravely. It's not a cat, it's a wild predator. A baby bobcat. His voice carried both awe and concern. Judging by its size and development, it was only days old when you found it. That explains the unusual behavior and its appetite. David felt his knees weaken, a chill running through him. Memories of its sharp eyes, its hunger for meat, its uncanny agility. All the strange signs suddenly made sense. He hadn't saved a kitten. He had been raising a wild hunter under his own roof. And now, the consequences of that truth loomed heavy before him. David sat in stunned silence as Dr. Miller's words echoed in his mind. A bobcat. Not a kitten, not the house pet he thought he had saved, but a wild predator. He looked down at the animal curled in his lap, its sharp eyes meeting his with a familiarity that pierced his heart. To David, it wasn't a threat. It was family. Legally, it should be transferred to a sanctuary, the vet explained gently. It needs space to grow, to hunt, to live as it was meant to. The words felt like a heavy blow. The thought of letting go after months of sleepless nights, of bottle feeding, of every moment they had shared, tore at David's soul. On the drive home, the bobcat cub pressed against him, purring, or something close to it. David's hands trembled on the wheel. He knew the vet was right, yet his heart resisted. How could he abandon the creature that had survived only because of him? That night, as the cub dozed peacefully on his couch, David made his choice. He would ensure it received proper care, but he would never see it as just a wild animal. To him, it was the life he had saved, the soul he had nurtured. The bond was real, and no revelation could erase it. Months later, the once frail creature had grown strong and majestic. Its muscles rippled beneath a sleek coat, its movements graceful yet wild. At a sanctuary where it could roam freely, the young bobcat thrived. But every visit from David brought the same reaction. The animal would rush toward him, pressing its head against the fence, eyes softening in recognition. Neighbors, friends, and even strangers who heard his story were astonished. A man who thought he had saved a kitten had unknowingly raised a wild predator. And yet, love had bridged the gap between human and beast. David often stood by the enclosure, watching proudly. "You're not just a bobcat to me," he whispered once. "You're family." And in that moment, everyone who heard the tale understood. Compassion had created a bond stronger than fear, and a simple act of rescue had become unforgettable.